8 scary facts about the Federal Reserve. Number 1. The Federal Reserve is a privately owned bank. The U.S. government has no control over its activities. Number 2. All the money dispersed into the economy is provided by the Federal Reserve at the request of banks and economic institutions. Number 3. The Federal Reserve controls the inflation, deflation, and interest rates of the American economy. They implement interest rates on the inflation, essentially creating a pro-debt environment. Number 4. The chairman of the Federal Reserve is chosen by the President of the USA. However, the President is given a list of members to choose from. These members are chosen by the Federal Reserve, so in essence, the Federal Reserve chooses its chairman. Number 5. The monetary conspiracy of the Federal Reserve happened on Jekyll Island in Georgia by members of powerful families, including the Rockefellers, J.P. Morgan, and the Rothschilds. The meeting was so secret that the members all had code names. Number 6. The main reason the Founding Fathers abdicated England was due to their opposition of England's central banking system and the English taxation. Many of the founders gave up everything for this belief. Number 7. The identity of a central bank was opposed by many famous Americans for its devastating and corrupt actions. Ben Franklin said, quote, "If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered." President Andrew Jackson said his greatest achievement as president was that, quote, "I killed the bank." He also said, quote, "The bank is trying to kill me, but I will kill it." And, if the American people only understood the rank injustice of our money and the banking system, there would be a revolution before morning. Jackson was responsible for dismantling the central bank, and he was the only president to not have any national debt. It makes you wonder why he is to be replaced on the $20 bill as opposed to somebody else. Abraham Lincoln created the Greenback Law in response to international banks demanding interest on all money borrowed to fund the Civil War. The Greenback Law allowed the U.S. Treasury to print notes so America wouldn't be in huge debt with vast interest rates after the war's end. President James Garfield said, quote, "Whoever controls the money in any country is absolute master of industry, legislation, and commerce. Yet America is allowing that today." Woodrow Wilson, who signed the Federal Reserve Act into law in 1913 and created the IRS, said it was one of his biggest regrets. Wilson said, quote, "I am a most unhappy man. I have unwittingly ruined my country. A great industrial nation is controlled by a system of credit. Our system of credit is concentrated. The growth of the nation, therefore, and all of our activities are in the hands of a few men. We have come to be one of the worst ruled, one of the most completely controlled and dominated governments in the civilized world. We are no longer a government by free opinion, no longer a government by conviction and the vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion and duress of a small group of dominant men." Franklin Roosevelt, in a letter to the Colonel House in 1933, said, quote, "The real truth of the matter is, as you and I know, that a financial element in large centers has owned the government ever since the days of Andrew Jackson." James Madison said, quote, "History records that many changers have used every form of abuse, intrigue, deceit, and violent means possible to maintain their control over governments by controlling money and its issuance. Napoleon Bonaparte, although not an American, but still borrowed money from the Bank of Rothschilds, said at the end of his rule, quote, 'When a government is dependent upon bankers for money, they, and not the leaders of the government, control the situation, since the hand that gives is above the hand that takes. Money has no motherland. Financiers are without patriotism, end without decency. Their sole object is to gain. And finally, Fact 8. The last president to attack the Federal Reserve was John F. Kennedy. JFK implemented Executive Order 11110, which allowed the U.S. Treasury to create its own currency note, which would dismantle the Federal Reserve and drastically reduce interest rates and stop taxes on inflation. 6 months later, Kennedy was killed, and Lyndon B. Johnson threw out the order. The Federal Reserve is a nefarious agent for world domination and greed. When will America take back what is theirs?